Right, let's get into it. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are going to completely break down the intricate lore, the strategic world building, and honestly, the incredibly cool, magical heist-like logistics found in episodes 31 to 34 of Legend of the Jolan. We are entering a genuinely fascinating arc of the story here, and it's one that really deserves a deep dive. You know, so often in the fantasy genre, massive, world-ending problems are solved simply by the hero hitting the bad guy harder than the bad guy hit them. It's a classic trope. But what really sets this particular narrative apart, what makes it so compelling to analyze, is exactly how it blends high-stakes magical combat with actual boots-on-the-ground supply chain logistics. We're talking agricultural science. We're talking deep, metaphysical strategy that actually matters in the physical world. Today, we are going to look at exactly how our heroes tackle a literal, magically induced ice age. And spoiler alert, they don't just do it with swords and shields. They do it with seeds, a whole lot of blacksmiths, and an incredibly clever, unconventional use of defensive magic. It is a brilliant sequence of events, so let's unpack it.
Because this source material actively jumps back and forth between a very physical, gritty survival narrative and a highly metaphysical dream sequence involving ancient titans, we'll use this quick roadmap to keep our analysis on track. We'll start with the Land of Perpetual Ice, move into Dreams of Darkness, explore the strategy of unity, break down the Phoenix's warmth, and finally wrap up with the battle atop Mount Frost.
Starting off with Section 1, the Land of Perpetual Ice. We need to look at the unnatural crisis at hand. Our explainer begins with an immediate, highly tangible crisis that is actively facing the continent of storms. The situation here is incredibly grim, right from the jump, and it perfectly sets the stage for the massive undertaking our heroes are about to attempt. When the crew finally arrives after a grueling, weeks-long sea voyage, a voyage which, by the way, features poor Harry throwing up over the side of the ship for the vast majority of the trip, they aren't greeted by a hospitable port. Instead, they are instantly met with frigid winds, blinding dense mist, and a localized ice age. And we have to be clear here, this isn't some natural seasonal weather pattern. This is a deliberate, targeted attack. It's the active work of a rampaging enemy general named Aesicle. Now, I want you to notice the stark contrast in how the different characters handle this extreme environment right off the boat. You've got Jason, Harry, and Hosek, and they are shivering uncontrollably. They are completely out of their element, physically suffering from the cold. But then you look at Bjorn. Bjorn is perfectly fine. Why? Because he's utilizing a technique he calls dragon breath. He's partially triggering a fiery psychic to constantly release and then breathe in fiery Joki, effectively turning his own body into a walking, breathing space heater. It's such a brilliant little character moment, isn't it? It highlights their adaptability and their mastery of their powers right out of the gate.
But here is the tragic reality. For the actual everyday citizens of the continent, there is no magical dragon breath technique to save them. The people living there are facing a literal dead end. Master Luna uses her Psycho Rage, Thunder, to scout the area, and she delivers an absolutely chilling report. Aesical's fierce, magical winds have created a situation so severe that the local population is forced into a cruel, impossible choice. They can either stay and literally freeze to death in their exposed villages, or they can retreat deep into the caves for warmth, but ultimately starve to death because they can't grow or forage for any food. This grim, desperate reality makes a certain detail from earlier in the story all the more intriguing. Think back to Harry's highly unusual request to the King of Gaia right before they set sail. When the king offered his royal assistance, Harry didn't ask for legendary weapons. He didn't ask for a battalion of soldiers. He asked for a constant, reliable supply of food, drought-resistant seeds, and blacksmiths. Lots and lots of blacksmiths. I want you to really hold on to that thought, because those blacksmiths are the absolute linchpin of this entire story arc.
Moving on to Section 2, Dreams of Darkness, it's time to take a little metaphysical detour.
To fully understand the overarching strategy of the villains here, we actually have to slow things down for a minute and step out of the freezing cold. We need to take a detour into a timeless, metaphysical dream realm aboard a place called Benedict's Ark. What's really fascinating about this part of the lore is the profound face-off between Ryu, who is a legendary figure of creation, and his ancient arch-nemesis, Tristran. And Josek actually experiences this entire encounter through an incredibly vivid vision while he's sleeping. It's like he's a fly on the wall of history. In this vision, Ryo and his companions are walking through this massive underground forest that is supported by giant crystals. We learn this is a magical agricultural tool called Protocol Limelight. Suddenly, right in the middle of this creative marvel, the suffocating darkness of Ryu's homeworld, Tristran, manifests. They just stand there, two absolute titans of creation and destruction, staring each other down. It's incredibly tense. Tristran outright boasts that his dark forces are actively working to separate Ryu's students across the world. specifically to prevent them from gathering, communicating, and uniting. Through this deeply immersive dream connection, Hosek watches his own homeworld as an observer, and he sees the terrifying truth of Tristran's words manifesting in real time through a villain named Saruyu and his 7 generals. These generals are out there actively unleashing highly targeted disasters. Look at what they are doing. Apollo is out there transforming stable mountains into erupting volcanoes. Gargalem is plaguing entire continents with devastating earthquakes. Anubis has starved Avalon by literally kidnapping its women. Axikal, as we know, has created the land of perpetual ice they are currently standing in. Eros is unleashing fierce windstorms. Raichu is bringing endless thunderstorms. And Siren has turned the very sea itself into a destructive, impassable force. You see, these aren't just random chaotic acts of violence. Not at all. They are highly calculated, targeted disasters designed to disrupt trade, destroy infrastructure, box the continents into absolute isolation, and fill the global population with paralyzing fear. They are systematically dismantling the logistical and social ties that bind humanity together.
And this brings us to the core thesis of the entire conflict. It brilliantly illustrates exactly what this war is actually about. So the crucial takeaway here is that this is fundamentally a war of division versus unity. Tristran and Saryu's strategy is simple but devastating. They win by separating people. If they can suppress the Earth, inflict these constant disasters, and isolate humans, eventually, out of pure desperation and starvation, humanity will turn on itself. But then you have Ryu's counter-strategy. His approach, which is beautifully symbolized by concepts like Protocol Lightline and the Earth Suturing Seeds, is all about recreating those severed roots. It's entirely about re-establishing lost ties, sharing resources, and fostering a common history. The heroes can't win by just fighting. They win by combining their unique powers to rebuild the literal and figurative supply lines of hope.
Let's jump into Section 3, the strategy of unity, and see how this all connects.
Okay, so let's see how this deep, philosophical dream sequence actually builds into a concrete, actionable counteroffensive for our heroes in the waking world. When Hosek finally wakes up from this intense vision, he opens his eyes to find Harry and Bjorn just staring at him. And why are they staring? Because incredibly, they literally just had the exact same dream. All 3 of them saw the Titans clashing in that underground forest simultaneously. Master Andrea steps in to explain this phenomenon, calling it resonance. She explains that because these 3 have repeatedly pushed their limits and used fused psycho-urges in combat, their underlying bond has radically accelerated. They have achieved an affinity so incredibly strong that the ancient fragments of the Phoenix residing within them actually recognize the 3 separate hosts as a single, unified entity. So resonance basically acts as the biological and magical connective tissue between the physical world and the dream world. It proves that the very concept of unity is physically manifesting within their own minds.
And the amazing thing is, this unity isn't just happening inside their heads, it's actively happening on a global, logistical scale. Think back to the dream, where Ryu explained that the Earth Suturing Seeds were already being sown. It sounded like a metaphor, right? Well, when the heroes wake up and actually speak with the starving chief hiding in the caves, they tell him about the supplies they've arranged. The chief is completely stunned to learn that 3 entirely different continents banded together just to send them food. That's when it clicks for the heroes. They realize that their diplomatic logistics, the literal act of trading food, reeds, and ores across the continents of Gaia, Vung, and Avalon, are actually the physical manifestation of those Earth-suturing seeds. Every trade ship, every shared resource is a root taking hold. They are actively breaking the isolation that Tristran and Soryu worked so hard to create.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Phoenix's warmth. This is where the magic really happens.
Armed with this profound realization that unity and connection are their ultimate weapons, we enter what I think is easily the most exciting phase of the story. Harry's brilliantly intricate, wildly ambitious logistical plan to literally conquer the ice. Remember those blacksmiths he requested from the king? Here is exactly where they come into play. Pacing this whole sequence like a high-stakes magical heist movie, Harry unveils a plan that uses powerful magic not for blowing things up, but for massive-scale agriculture. Let's break down the steps,
Step 1, he wants to use Hozek's Killer Ghost ability to multiply, sending clones out to raise huge, magical protective domes over designated patches of the icy wasteland, completely isolating the freezing air inside from the storm outside. Step 2, he needs Hozek to finally alter the magical structure of those domes to simulate tiny atmospheric pores. This allows just the barest minimum of air in, creating an artificial greenhouse effect to slowly melt the trapped ice. Step 3, those blacksmiths from Gaia are going to construct and lay down a massive, intricate network of metal pipes leading from the naturally warm underground caves directly into these sealed domes. And finally, Step 4, the Masters will use their abilities to push a steady mixture of heat and air through the pipes, artificially warming the soil so the starving people can safely sow those drought-resistant seeds.
Now, when Harry finishes explaining this incredibly complex terraforming project, the text specifically notes that everyone just draws back in utter shock. And honestly, can you blame them? Bjorn initially roars that Harry is completely insane for wanting to plant fragile seeds in the middle of a magical, hostile ice age. But as the sheer genius of the plan sinks in, it completely stuns the group. Even Bjorn has to admit it's shocking precisely because it actually makes perfect sense. Harry's plan seamlessly blends Hozek's hardcore magical defense capabilities with practical thermodynamics, plumbing, and agriculture. It is the absolute ultimate manifestation of adaptability and teamwork. It's taking everything they have and applying it to a completely unique problem.
And to really grasp the gravity of this, we have to appreciate the sheer scale of the timeline involved. This isn't some quick spell cast in an instant with a wave of a wand. No, this is a massive, grueling, months-long logistical undertaking. Just look at the schedule. It took a full week just to gather the necessary blacksmiths back home, and then another 3 long weeks just to sail through those dangerous waters to get there. Once they arrive, it takes the blacksmiths an entire back-breaking month to construct and perfectly lay the heating pipes through the tunnels that Josek has to modify his domes to safely create. And then, after all that infrastructure is in place, it takes another 2 full months for the drought-resistant crops to actually grow and finally bear fruit, with Jason having to periodically imbue the frozen ground with his life magic just to give it a fighting chance. It's a staggering test of endurance for everyone, especially for Josek, who literally has to maintain those magical protective domes non-stop for months on end. But it pays off. It absolutely pays off, proving that through sheer grit, logistics, and unity, they can successfully take back the life of the land from the ice.
Finally, we reach Section 5, the climax, the battle atop Mount Frost.
So, with the crops finally thriving and the desperate people fed, the heroes have successfully dismantled the villain's secondary, crueler objective of mass starvation. They solved the logistics problem. Now, the only thing left to do is eliminate the root cause of the unnatural cold itself. But, utilizing the wisdom they've gained, the masters and students don't just blindly charge in sword swinging. That's not their style anymore. They prepare. First, they gather crucial intel from the citizens surviving in the caves, successfully pinpointing the exact epicenter of the fiercest magical storms. This leads them to travel directly to Mount Frost, which serves as the terrifying nest of the Ice General Ossicle. And here is where they show some truly incredible tactical foresight. Master Khaim looks around and notices that the entire potential battlefield is covered in razor-sharp, highly hazardous ice crystals. So, before Ossicle even arrives on the scene, they take the initiative. They actively reshape the terrain, using their combined flames to melt away the sharp ice crystals so that nobody accidentally falls onto them during the chaotic fight to come. It's brilliant. They are literally shifting the battlefield to their advantage before the boss even spawns. But naturally, the homeowner isn't exactly thrilled to find his living room redecorated. A completely furious Asakal returns to his mountain peak to find his lethal nest melted away. Now, Asakal is a terrifying sight, a humongous, bird-like creature with feathers made entirely out of jagged, sharp ice crystals, and he screeches down at them. "I suppose I'll just have to make myself a new nest here then, after I've gotten rid of all of you, that is." With that threat, he spreads his massive, icy wings to unleash a deadly, high-speed barrage of thousands of icy spears raining directly down upon our heroes. The sheer, overwhelming scale and speed of his attack immediately threatens to wipe them out instantly.
But here is where all that talk about resonance and unity pays off in a major way. The heroes are completely telepathically in sync. Relying on their lightning-fast thought communication, Master Colette is able to orchestrate a flawless, perfectly synchronized defense in literally a fraction of a second. It's a 3-step masterclass in defensive magic. Step 1. She commands everyone to instantly extend their fiery Joki to create personal individual heat shields. Step 2. Hosek throws up a massive, reinforced defensive dome entirely around the Masters to absorb the brunt of the impact. But it is Step 3 that is the true stroke of genius. Colette instructs Hosek to simultaneously raise a second dome, but this one isn't for them. This dome goes entirely around Asakala himself. Think about that. They don't just try to block the overwhelming attack. They actively use Hosek's powerful shields to completely contain the villain's barrage within his own immediate space, effectively turning his ultimate offensive weapon into a contained, localized hazard that he now has to deal with.
And that incredible split-second defensive maneuver brings us right to the absolute edge of our seats. It leaves us with this final, highly provocative thought to chew on. As Asakal is trapped inside a magical dome of their making, unleashing his absolute icy fury, will this incredible, hard-fought strategy of unity, telepathic teamwork, and months of logistical genius actually be enough to permanently shatter the land of perpetual ice? You are definitely going to have to dive into the next chapter of the source material to see the conclusion of this epic clash. But what we've undeniably learned today is that sometimes in the face of impossible odds, the absolute greatest magical weapon you can possibly wield isn't the spell at all. It's a well-laid pipe, a shared vision, and a common goal. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope you found this deep dive as fascinating as I did.